Welcome back to Tide and Tigers. It's 5-star time. Your favorite segment, Burgin's 5-star picks. We got 2 for you this week. With the Iron Bowl happening in basketball this weekend, I had to think to myself, what are the best rivalries in sports of college? In college of sports. But yes, what are the 5 best rivalries? And this could vary for everything. I will say I'll start out with my honorable mention is Duke versus North Carolina. It's just not big in any other sport but basketball. But I have to mention, in basketball, it is the greatest rivalry. So that's going to be my honorable mention to start. But number 5, Army versus Navy. Anytime you get these two teams together, they have their own day dedicated to them in football. The game's gotten better. The teams have gotten better. It was obviously the biggest rivalry back in the day. You can't mention rivalries without speaking of Army and Navy. They're my number 5. Number 4, Oklahoma versus Texas. The Texas State Fair, the Red River Shootout, whatever you want to call it. Oklahoma, Texas, when they battle in basketball, baseball, football, whatever it is, there's usually a lot on the line. Some of my favorite games I've ever watched in non-SEC, now SEC, have been Oklahoma versus Texas. I would love to go to the State Fair, try out the fried Snickers bar, all these other things that's kind of one of my to-do bucket list, and go to an Oklahoma-Texas game. I got them at number 4. Number 3, Florida versus FSU. In the 90s, I think this was the biggest rivalry. It was the most hatred rivalry. But to this day, it's lacked the luster a little bit. Baseball, usually good competition. A lot of teams going to Omaha for both those. Basketball, Florida State's fallen off. Florida's gone up. But it was still a big rivalry. Football, it was the rivalry in the 90s. It's peaked a little bit, calmed back down. Both teams need to be at their peak. It seems like they haven't found that lately, but it's still number 3 on my list. Number 2, Ohio State versus Michigan. Planting the field this year only stirred that rivalry up even more. That has been a brutal rivalry that Michigan has gotten the best of a lot lately. But when the Buckeyes and the Wolverines play, it's usually 1 versus 2. Most of the time the past couple of years, it's usually a lot of things on the line to go to a national championship, Big Ten championship. That's a game. It's a must-watch game at 11 o'clock every year in I was about to say Iron Bowl week. It is Iron Bowl week that week. But yes, Michigan, Ohio State is going to be number 2. And number 1 is the Iron Bowl. What those games have produced in-state, all these other ones besides Florida State are not in-state. These people live with each other every year. But Florida State, they have pro teams. The Jags, the Dolphins, all these other places have pro teams. Cowboys in Texas. There's no pro teams in Alabama. It is Alabama and Auburn. So when they play, it's the biggest thing. And now you have them playing in basketball 1 versus 2. It trumps on top. That's my number 1. Top players who deserve more. I thought about this because I saw the interview with Johnny Manziel and Marcus Lattimore. Lattimore has not gotten his due for South Carolina. He had the greatest freshman season all time in SEC history, and I don't think they do enough to really show him love at South Carolina. This is all about showing people love that haven't really gotten love, like people like Tebow and all these other people that they just praise. Peyton Manning. It's like, Peyton Manning never won a national championship. He never even beat Florida. Yet he gets so much praise. Who doesn't get praise is number 5 on my list, Eric Berry. Eric Berry battled leukemia, all-pro NFL player. He was the greatest, besides Reggie White, greatest defensive player ever to play at Tennessee. He didn't even have his jersey retired. This guy was a 5-star, All-American, you name it, Eric Berry was it. I don't want to talk about his hit on No Sean Marino, but Berry's number 5 on my list. And number 4 on my list, Marcus Lattimore. We know about the injury that ended Lattimore's career. He still fought back. But that man was the greatest running back outside of George Rogers ever to play at South Carolina. And I still don't think he gets his due. And what's crazy is a lot of these players on this list, I would say all 5 on these players on this list, really don't have big personalities. They're quiet type people. They don't, promote their own selves, and they'd rather stay out of the spotlight. But I think that these college teams should put them into the spotlight. Lattimore's number 4. Number 3, Carnell Williams. Cadillac, to me, is the best running back outside of Bo Jackson that Auburn's ever had. Bo's got a statue. I'm not saying Cadillac deserves a statue, but man, I think he really should have been considered for the job. When he played, when he was coaching Auburn, that was some of the hardest Auburn football team I've ever seen play. And they go hire some guy from Boise that lasts less than 2 years, and they give all these other people a shot like Hugh Freeze, who's got a back history like nobody else, and they wouldn't give Cadillac a shot, who did more for that program than anybody maybe in the history of Auburn with coaching and playing. Cadillac deserves more. Number 2.
Well, we talked a lot about why that happened.
Yes. Number 2, Tyrann Mathieu. How is Tyrann Mathieu not in the LSU Football Hall of Fame? The Honey Badger holds the record for most forced fumbles by a player in SEC history. This guy was Mr. Everything. I know he had his ups and downs all the field. But again, I felt like Bruce Arians and the Arizona Cardinals did more for his support of helping him get back on track than LSU ever did.
Well, and he gave up weed. You know how many players never completed that? Josh Gordon, other ones?
Yes.
He completed rehab.
But they helped him more. LSU never did that. They kind of just rode off his success to a national championship and kind of just let him go in the dust. And I think he deserved more for what he did in LSU in that time period. He was a must-see player. Number one, no doubt, Percy Harvin. He is the greatest player ever to play at Florida. I don't care what you think about Tebow. I don't care what you say about Emmitt Smith, Danny Werfel, Steve Spurrier. This is the greatest player to ever step foot in Florida in cleats. He's not even in their Ring of Honor. How is he? Wilbur Marshall, no offense, Wilbur, Jack Youngblood, one of the greatest of all time. Tebow, Emmett, and who was the last one? Danny Werfel. Steve Spurrier as well. Most of those guys have won Heisman. Some of them have not. This guy won 2 national championships in 3 years, did more for Florida in that time period, All-American, you name it. But Urban has gone on record. Other players besides Tebow have gone on record saying he was the best player on the team. Dan Mullen, Cam Newton, all have said that. He wasn't even on Swamp Kings. How they keep showing, who's this guy scoring all this touchdown? Why can't we interview this guy? I think Florida has let him come back and speak and stuff like that, but the university not having him at least in the Ring of Honor, it's a shame. That guy should be honored this year at some point, and if he's not, I will protest here on Titan Tigers.